Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're really diving deep into something we've gotten a ton of questions about from you all: the ketogenic diet and autism. We've got a whole bunch of your emails and articles and research pulled up and ready to go, so let's get right to it.
Sounds good to me.
Now, we're not going to spend too much time on the basics of keto since you're all pretty familiar with the whole high-fat, low-carb thing, right?
Right.
What's really got us intrigued, though, is how this diet, which everyone knows started as a treatment for epilepsy, is now being looked at for autism.
And it's pretty interesting when you think about it, how the success of keto with epilepsy,
Mm.
which is all about irregular brain activity, got researchers thinking, hey, maybe this could also affect neurotransmitters in the brain. And, maybe that could have an impact on autism.
So it's not just about what you're eating, but like how those foods are actually affecting your bodily systems.
Yeah, exactly. Like one of the big theories out there is about inflammation. You know how we're learning more and more about gut health and autism all the time?
Yeah.
Well, since keto impacts gut bacteria, some researchers believe that it could maybe reduce inflammation, which is often a big part of those gut issues.
That makes a lot of sense considering how much we're realizing gut health affects way more than just digestion.
Totally. And there's even more to it than that. See, some parents have noticed that because of the steady energy from the fats in keto, it seems to help their kids focus better and kind of reduces the hyperactivity that some autistic people experience.
Wow, steady energy instead of those sugar crashes. Sign me up. So with all these possible upsides to keto, I'm sure our listeners are dying to know, does it actually work for autism?
That is the million-dollar question for
Don't
sure.
leave us hanging.
Well, unfortunately, the evidence that directly shows a connection between the ketogenic diet and actual improvements in autism symptoms is honestly pretty limited.
So all the research we have is really about keto and epilepsy.
Pretty much. I mean, there have been some smaller studies looking at keto for autism, but there was this one big review published in Nutrients, and they basically said there's no really strong evidence to back up keto actually being effective for those core symptoms of autism.
Okay, so not exactly what we were hoping for, but we also know that autism is a spectrum, so it looks different for everyone. Could it be that keto just works for some people and not others?
It's definitely possible, yeah. Autism is so incredibly diverse that what's amazing for one person might do absolutely nothing for someone else. And when you're dealing with a super restrictive diet like keto, it's really important to think about the needs of each individual person.
Especially because so many autistic people already have those very specific food preferences or aversions. It sounds incredibly difficult to ask a child who already has a limited diet to restrict their food even more.
And it could actually be counterproductive. Plus, there's the whole issue of nutritional deficiencies to consider. If someone's doing keto and it's not something they've planned super carefully with a registered dietitian or a doctor who really understands autism, they could easily miss out on essential nutrients that are super important for growth and development. And that's even more of a concern if they already have some food aversions.
It's like you're adding another layer of difficulty onto a situation that's already so complex. It makes you wonder, if keto has all these potential concerns, is there something else that's more reliable that parents and caregivers could turn to?
Now you're talking. While keto might be the hot topic of the day, it's important to remember there are things that are proven to help autistic individuals. And the good news is there are actually a lot of evidence-based interventions out there that really make a difference.
Okay, so let's dive into those interventions that we know are backed by solid research. What are some of the things that have really been shown to help?
One of the biggest ones, and one you've probably heard of, is applied behavior analysis, or ABA.
ABA.
Yeah. This therapy has been studied a ton, and it's got a really good track record. Basically, what it does is it breaks skills down into smaller steps, like manageable steps, and then you reward progress, and it helps people learn in a way that's structured, but also like really tailored to them as a person.
So instead of just throwing a whole bunch of complicated stuff at someone, you're building up to it piece by piece.
Exactly. And the best part is it's not one size fits all. Therapists who do ABA work really closely with the person and their family, too, to figure out what their goals are and make a plan that's actually going to get them there.
That personalization seems super important, especially with something as diverse as autism.
Totally. And there's other stuff that can be super helpful, too, besides ABA. Like, there's specific ways of teaching that are designed for autistic learners, things like structured teaching methods. They use a lot of visual aids and have clear routines. And again, it all comes back to that individualized support so people can really learn and be engaged.
It's amazing how much those visual and structured elements can make a difference for some people.
Yeah, it really shows how important it is to understand that everybody's brain learns differently. And we can't forget about social skills training either. That can be huge for helping people navigate social stuff, build relationships, and communicate better. There's so much research that shows just how helpful these types of things can be. And the best part is a lot of them can just be built right into a person's everyday life, like at home, in school, with friends, wherever.
So it's less about finding that one perfect solution and more about creating this whole support system around them.
Exactly. It's a total team effort.
Hmm.
And this is where having those experienced professionals on your side is so important. Therapists, educators, doctors who specialize in autism, they're the ones who can help families make sense of all the options out there and figure out what's best for their loved one and get them on the right path.
It really sounds like a much more empowering approach than putting all your hopes into a diet like keto, especially when we don't have the research to back it up yet.
I totally agree. Like, I'm not saying diet isn't important for our health. Of course it is. But for everyone, the priority should be a balanced, nutritious diet that they actually enjoy and that meets their needs.
So ditch the fad diets and stick to the good stuff.
Exactly. Fruits, veggies, whole grains, lean protein, those are the things that are good for everyone, whether you're autistic or not. And if there are concerns about getting enough nutrients, or if someone has very specific dietary needs, that's where a registered dietitian comes in, especially one who understands autism.
They can help create a meal plan that's both good for them and something they'll actually eat.
Exactly. Because, let's be real, forcing anyone, especially a kid, to eat foods they hate is just setting everyone up for a bad time.
For sure. It just makes mealtimes a battle, and nobody needs that. Okay, so we've talked about having a balanced diet and those evidence-based interventions, but what about those parents and caregivers who are listening who are just feeling so overwhelmed by everything out there? What would you say to them?
That's such a good question because it's easy to feel lost when you're trying to help your loved one and you're faced with so much information.
Hmm.
And honestly, don't be afraid to question everything.
It really is easy to get caught up in all of that when you see a headline that's like, miracle cure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You got to be careful about those.
Right.
Yeah, be critical of those kinds of claims.
Yeah,
The ones that sound too good to be true.
exactly.
And like, don't fall for those miracle cures you see online.
Yeah.
Instead, what you want to do is stick to interventions and therapies that have actual research behind them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Talk to your doctor or therapist, people you trust.
Yeah.
Look for information from reputable sources and never be afraid to ask questions.
Mm.
Like, really grill them. Make sure you understand.
Because you're the one who knows your loved one best.
Exactly. You're their advocate. You're on their team. And that's
Okay.
so important to remember, especially with something like autism, where it can be so different for every single person.
Absolutely.
Like, what works for one person might not work for another at all. And that's okay. It's about finding what works for them, what helps them thrive.
So true.
Like, what are their needs? What are their strengths? And how can we support them in the best way possible?
So to sum everything up for our listeners today who've been with us on this deep dive into keto and autism, here's the deal. While keto is a hot topic right now, the evidence just isn't really there to say it's some kind of miracle cure for autism.
Nope, not yet anyway.
Yeah, so instead of getting caught up in all the hype around these fad diets, let's focus on what we know actually helps. And a big part of that is making sure your loved one has a balanced and nutritious diet that's tailored specifically for them. And like we talked about, don't forget about all those evidence-based interventions that we know can be so impactful.
Right, like ABA therapy, those structured teaching methods, social skills training, all that good stuff.
Huh.
There's a reason they've been researched so much is because they work.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Reach out to the professionals in your life, the therapists, the educators, the registered dietitians. They can help you create a plan that really meets your loved one's unique needs and helps them reach their full potential.
It's all about building that support system, having people in your corner.
It really is. And if this deep dive has got you thinking and you've got even more questions, that's awesome. Keep being curious. Keep diving deep into the world of autism and all the amazing resources and support that's out there. And remember, we'll be here for your next deep dive, ready to tackle the next big topic.
Until then.
Happy exploring, everyone.